Watching boxing, it can be sometimes difficult to figure out who's a good prospect and who's a bad one. There are so many young, undefeated fighters in boxing across different weight classes who look really good on their way up and end up losing at some point after taking the wrong fight. So I've compiled a list of about 40 prospects in boxing across all the weight classes, and I'm going to rank them on how far I think they go. Just to clarify the definition of a prospect, more or less it's a boxer who's never fought someone inside the top 10 in their division. For the sake of the video, I've included some boxers who you may consider a contender, like Cruz and Xander Zayas, but none of them have actually fought someone inside the top 10 in their division. The perfect example of a prospect would be Emiliano Vargas. He's not ranked in the top 15 by any sanctioning body. However, someone like Christian Mbili or Vergil Ortiz Jr. would be considered a contender. Even though they're undefeated and never fought for a title, they're firmly in the top 10 in their division. With all the introductions out the way, let's start off immediately with Richard Torrez Jr., who's going to go in mid-ceiling. I know he's got a funny haircut and a funny moustache, but he's also not that good. He does have quite a good amateur record. He won a silver medal in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, 2019 Pan American Games, Golden Gloves, US National Championships. But judging him as an actual professional boxer, I don't like his defense. I think he's a bit reckless. I don't like his footwork. I don't like his ability to move backwards. I don't think he would do well on the back foot. His fight versus Guido Vianello was a shitfest, but there were some moments in the middle rounds where Vianello had Torrez backing up, and Torrez simply did not look very comfortable. Warning signs like that are the reason why I don't think Torrez has a very high ceiling. Moving on slightly further up to future contender, where we have Adam Azim. Azim is still quite raw, makes some mistakes, especially defensively, but athletically he's one of the best prospects on this list. He's extremely fast on his feet, fast hands, fast reflexes. He's also still very young, only 22 years old, had a great performance last time out versus Sergey Lipinets. So he does have quite a high ceiling. I can just see him losing on his way up because of certain defensive habits, but those issues are quite fixable, so he could go higher. Moving on the same tier, we have Emiliano Vargas. Prospects like Vargas can be a bit difficult to figure out simply because we don't know too much about him. He's beaten guys that he's expected to beat in the manner that he's expected to beat him. He seems disciplined and versatile, but I do get a feeling he doesn't hit as hard as he thinks he does, and that sort of thing can result in a loss, whether from overconfidence or chasing a finish. He's one of many on this list where we need to see him in a hard fight first. Moving on further down, we have Imam Kataev. I could put Kataev further down simply because he's facing David Morrell next, and I think he's going to get sparks by David Morrell. But David Morrell is such a difficult step-up fight. It's a bit disrespectful to Kataev to put him that low on the list, knowing the fighters who are going to be in that tier. He is a murderous puncher, one of the strongest fighters in the division, and a very good amateur as well. He just doesn't look very good on the back foot, similar to Richard Torrez Jr., which means I can't trust him to go that high in the division. Moving on much further up to Abdullah Mason. I've put Abdullah Mason in the future champ tier. You can definitely make a case for him to go even higher. I know a lot of people are going to point to the time he got dropped twice by Johan Vasquez, but I was honestly impressed by that performance. He gets dropped and immediately responds by dropping his opponent about 10 seconds afterwards. What we see too often is slick fighters who get dropped and have no answer offensively afterwards. They have to spend a whole round running around to recover. Abdullah Mason is a fighter and he can fight, alongside his razor-sharp boxing ability. He's come really far at a really young age. The only thing holding him back is that he sometimes gets overconfident, but that's all very fixable. Moving on in the same tier, we have Pat McCormack. McCormack was an amateur standout, won a silver medal at the Olympics, losing in the final to one of the best Cuban amateurs of the past 20 years, Roniel Iglesias. To me, as a prospect, Pat McCormack simply has it all. Razor-sharp reflexes, punching power, head movement, defense, accuracy. He's an extremely calculated boxer. He put on an absolutely flawless performance over Robbie Davis Jr. last time out, and I can see him beating a lot of people in the welterweight division. I will say sometimes he's a bit too calculated for his own good. He does wait quite a long time in between punches, which may put him below some prospects on this list. But either way, he's definitely one to look out for. Moving on to yet another undefeated British prospect, Sam Noakes. To me, when I'm looking out for a prospect, what tends to catch my eye is someone who's a strong, powerful pressure boxer who can actually really box and not just brawl. One of those boxers would be Sam Noakes. For a lightweight, he's absolutely packed with muscle, and he does have somewhat slow hands, but he's extremely good at cutting off the ring. Sam Noakes has, in my opinion, the three most important things to being a successful pressure boxer: cutting off the ring, body work, and breaking the clinch. Sam Noakes is very good at all three of those things, and he's someone that's really caught my eye on these TNT sports shows over in the UK. However, one thing that does hold him back is the hand speed. I can definitely see a very slick back foot mover like Shakur Stevenson or Abdullah Mason simply being too quick in and out for Sam Noakes to catch. But there are a lot of guys at 135 I think he can beat. At one point he was rumoured to fight for the title last year versus Dennis Berinchik before Keyshawn Davis fought him, and I think he definitely would have won that fight. Moving on a bit further up, we have Torrez Jr. I'm not sure why he's got the same first and last name, but either way, he's the first in the high potential tier. This tier is mostly reserved for prospects who we don't really know that much about. Torrez, for example, has only fought 7 pro fights, all of which ended in the first or second round. Torrez definitely has the look of a potential really good professional. He moves well, which is important for a heavyweight. As of right now, his defense is slightly concerning, but he's never really been given a reason to put his hands up. So based on the amateur record and how he looks so far, I think Torrez belongs in high potential. An even better heavyweight amateur on the same list is going to be Bakhodir Jalolov. Jalolov may have the best amateur achievements on paper. Definitely out of the heavyweights and maybe in all of boxing. He's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, won the 2019 World Championships, won the 2023 World Championships, but I think there's a reason he's not fully taken the professional game seriously yet. Obviously one reason would be he's from Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan really values the amateur games, potentially more than a professional world title, but also because I think his style doesn't really fit the pros. I can see him struggling a lot if he's being pushed backwards and he can't put someone away. We saw shades of that versus Ihor Shevardzutsky in his last fight, a guy who Martin Bakole knocked out in 3 rounds. I can just imagine a guy like Daniel Dubois being an absolute nightmare for Jalolov, and that's why I've not put him too high on the list. Moving on back up to high potential, we have Xander Zayas. Zayas is probably closest to a title shot out of anyone on this list. We do know quite a lot about him already. We've seen his defense and offense progress over the years, and he's grown into a very impressive, calculated boxer. His performance over Patrick Teixeira was flawless, but we haven't seen him versus someone who's got a really good jab or can push him backwards. 154 is completely stacked with really difficult fighters, and I don't see him as that talented where I'll pick him over the likes of Murtazaliev, Madrimov, Boachuk yet, but he is very talented. I know he's not really a prospect, but he belongs on the list for comparison. Moving on all the way down to the first in our will lose soon tier, we have Yadir Herrera. The reasoning here is quite simple. Herrera's defense is not great. Herrera is surprisingly a big deal. He's got about 2 million followers on Instagram. I'm not sure why, but boxing wise, Herrera is very strong, he's very athletic, but he's quite stiff, bad defense, and I'm just not that convinced by him at all. Moving on in the same tier, we have Gergen Hovhannisyan. Hovhannisyan is another one of those guys who's got an impressive amateur background, but looks quite flat in the pros. I don't think he's ever moved his head. I think he's gained even more weight since turning professional, and I can just see a good counterpuncher putting him out. Moving on all the way up to future Undisputed, we have Rohan Polanco. I'm a massive fan of Polanco and his fighting style. I love the whole aggressive catch and counter style he's got going on. He stands right in front of his opponents and they still struggle to land clean on him. That style is also very versatile at the same time, which is a bright sign for his future. We've seen some boxers try to bring the fight to him and they've failed miserably. We've seen people try to outbox him at distance and they've also failed miserably. He's simply too good in the pocket and too good at cutting off the ring, which is why he's my second highest rated prospect in boxing. He's one of those boxers I really struggle to figure out a way to beat him. And I think once Jaron Ennis moves up to 154, Polanco is certain to beat everyone at 147. Moving on all the way back down to will lose soon, we have Joseph Ward. I made a video about the top 10 prospects in boxing a while ago. I put Joseph Ward on there at number 7, completely based on his amateur record. But to be honest, re-watching some of his professional fights, I don't really think the pros suit him. He's got a really, really good amateur record. He beat Alexander Kisniak, who's the best amateur in the world, but he just doesn't look that impressive as a pro. I think he is going to beat Lerone Richards in his next fight, but afterwards, it may be losing time. Moving on a bit further up, we have Callum Walsh. Walsh has definitely been promoted a lot more than he deserves. I'm not sure why Dana White chose him as his prospect. There's better amateurs out of Ireland like Aidan Walsh. They even share the same last name. Walsh to me is a bit similar to Adam Azim, very young, very talented, very athletic, but to a worse extent. I'm not sure Walsh's style is going to translate that well in the top 10. He's got a bit of a weird, unorthodox Roy Jones Jr. sort of style, but I don't think he's really got the athleticism to go far with it. He is a talented boxer, I just don't see him going that far. Moving on in the same tier, we have Cameron Vuong. You could argue Vuong goes further down in the list because he should have lost to Gavin Gwynn. But at the same time, he is very young, and that's a very difficult fight to take at a young age. He's got fast hands, nice footwork. I can see him convincingly beating Gwynn in a rematch. But at the same time, if you're going to be a really good prospect, you should be getting through Gavin Gwynn anyway. So realistically, Vuong has quite a low ceiling, and does probably lose to some guys in the UK. Moving on back up to high potential, we have Erislandy Alvarez. Alvarez won gold in the lightweight division in the 2024 Paris Olympics. He beat one of the best amateurs in the world right now, Sofiano Mija, in the finals. And visually so far in the pros, he looks very good. The thing is though, I can't put a fighter too high on the list based on amateur achievements, but purely on potential, I think Alvarez is the best in that tier. Moving on all the way to the top again, we have Moses Itauma. Itauma is the prospect I rate the most in boxing. I've said this many times on the channel. You simply don't see heavyweights move, punch and box at the same time, the same way Itauma does. He went undefeated as an amateur, which is very uncommon. He turned pro at 18 and since then hasn't even come close to losing a round. He's been routinely knocking out opponents in the first, second or third round, and I don't think you can deny him after his one-round destruction versus Dempsey McKean. Moving on slightly further down, we have Kermel Moton. I do think future champ is the right place for him. I think keeping in mind he was 17 years old when he fought Anthony Cuba. Watch that fight and tell me 17-year-olds normally box that way. Think about where you were at 17 and then watch that fight. Moton's got a great amateur record. We can tell he's got a good chin, he's got power, he's got really fast hands. We saw him throwing 6-7 punch combinations last time out. Moton has a very bright future ahead of him, especially considering his strength is going to get better and better as he gets older and naturally bigger. Moving on further down to future contender, we have Ben Whittaker. Whittaker is probably the biggest name on this list. You could say he's already been fraud checked in the first fight versus Liam Cameron, as people say. To call him a fraud though, I think is a bit of a stretch. He is a silver medalist in the Olympics, falling short to Alan Lopez in the final. He's beaten other good prospects in the amateurs like Imam Katayev, Luka Plantic and Umar Jambekov. What I will say though is I can see the Liam Cameron effects happening again. I don't see Ben Whittaker doing his normal showboating stuff at this point onwards. I also don't think the Liam Cameron rematch showed that much, because we didn't get the chance to see Whittaker in deep waters, and if he's grown to cope with it, we've yet to see that from Whittaker, and that's what puts him a bit further down. Moving on a bit further up to future champ, where we have Ernesto Tito Mercado. I think there is a case you can make for Mercado being a perfect boxer. He's got maybe the best killer instincts on this list. He's explosive, fast and aggressive, but he's also very defensively sound as well. Similar to Pat McCormack, but a bit less defensively sound and a bit more offensively sound. I put him at number 6 on my top 10 prospects video last year. Since that video, he went on to beat Jose Pedraza in a perfect performance. He's got a great amateur record as well. He's got a great future ahead of him, and I think he's a future champ. Moving on to the worst boxer on the list, Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury shouldn't really be on the list at all, but because he's a name, I'm going to put him on there. Tommy Fury is not very good at all. He would lose to a lot of cruiserweights. Any top 50 cruiserweight I think beats him. People forget he arguably should have lost to that ginger guy in 2021, Jordan Grant. Tommy Fury is rubbish, but we all know that by now. Moving on to future contender, where we have Floyd Kid Austin Schofield. I think most people would have Schofield a tier lower, and if that's based on existing performances, I understand. He makes a lot of mistakes, he switches stances too much, he got dropped last time out versus Giron, and he definitely would have lost to Shakur Stevenson if that fight would have taken place. But keep in mind, Schofield is very, very young in his career, and he's an excellent athlete. I think he's got a really, really good jab, very fast and sharp. If he sticks behind his jab, I think he can be really good. But we've yet to see that, so he's going to stay there for now. Moving on down to mid-ceiling, we have Pat Brown. Pat Brown is the latest prospects out of the amateurs that Matchroom's been promoting, and Pat Brown's been given an unusual amount of promotion. His whole selling point is the idea that he's a really good amateur who went to the Olympics, but as soon as he qualified for the Olympics, he lost in the first bracket to Kano Machado, and visually he's just not that impressive. I'm not sure why Matchroom is promoting Pat Brown that much when they've got a guy like Pat McCormack in their stable. Either way, mid-ceiling for Pat Brown. Moving on further up to future champion, where we have Hayato Sutsumi. Hayato is a Japanese amateur standout. He didn't look too impressive in his first few professional fights, but since he's found his power, he's been looking spectacular. He stops Rene Alvarado in the 8th round, a guy who's been the distance with Gio Lopez, William Zepeda, Lamont Roach, Yuriorkis Gamboa, Jojo Diaz, and since then knocks out Jaime Arboleda in the 3rd round. His style really suits the professional game, and I think he's destined for a title at £130. Moving on to Hayato's brother, Haito Sutsumi. Haito is similar to Hayato, we just haven't seen as much from him in the pros as we have seen from Hayato, which is why he's down there. Haito is the younger brother and was actually seen as the better amateur and more talented boxer compared to Hayato, but like I say, we've yet to see it in the pros. If he's even better than Hayato Sutsumi, he may be in future Undisputed. Moving on, we have a series of 3 young undefeated under 23 years old Japanese amateurs, Daiakira, Yuta Sakai and Aoi Yokoyama. There's not much I can say about these 3 separately without repeating myself. They're all in quite similar positions in their careers. I think Daiakira out of the 3 is the most talented. They're all very good and you can expect to see them in title fights down the line. Moving on further down, we have Bakary Samake. Samake has grown into quite an impressive boxer in his last 2 fights. There were some warning signs versus Julio Alamos and versus Ahmed El Musawi, but in his last 2 versus Wade Ryan, who's known for upsetting prospects, and Rock Knapp, he's looked very good, but they were both step downs from Alamos, so ideally we do see him perform against an opponent of that calibre again. Before I put him any higher, but he's 21 years old, he's got all the time in the world to improve. Moving on to high potential, where we have David Lopez. Lopez is the latest prospect Overtime Boxing's been promoting since Kurt Scobie lost. Not too much to say about him so far. He's 21 years old, southpaw, looks quite good. He's well known in the amateur scene. He's been boxing since he was 5 years old. He's going to go in high potential. Also in high potential, we're going to have Dimitri Azanau. Unlike most of the others in the same tier, we have seen quite a lot out of Azanau as a professional. He's looked quite spectacular as a professional so far. Completely shut out Francesco Patera last time out. His amateur record speaks for itself. Wins over guys like Sofiano Mija, Lazaro Alvarez, Albert Batagaziev, Hector Luis Garcia, Sembata Adenabat, MJ Ahmed Aliyev twice, Andy Cruz back in 2015. If you know the amateurs, you know how good those names are. I would put him in future champ, but he did get dropped in one of his fights in Germany, which is a bit of a warning sign. Moving on back up to future Undisputed, we have Hasanboy Dusmatov. If you had to place a bet on anyone on this list being a champion, I think Dusmatov is the safest bet, and it's not entirely because of how good he is. He fights out of minimum weight, which is a very weak division. He's not fought in the pros since 2023, since he left to do the Olympics, and is still ranked number 8 by the WBA. He went on to win a gold medal in the Olympics. He also won a gold medal in the previous Olympics, and I think if you watch him you can tell how well his style is going to translate to the pros. He's a boxer puncher with great defense and he hits hard. Moving on a bit further down to future champ, where we have Muslim Gadzhimagomedov. I am cheating a bit by putting him on this list. He is technically a world champion in the bridgerweight division, but I'm going to put him on this list anyway for educational purposes. He's only had 6 fights as a pro and he's had some hard fights. Artem Man, Xiaozin Zhang, Leon Harth, Tabiso Machinu. If you look at his amateur record, Lesizbek Miloinov, David Naika, Chev Clark, Erislandy Savin, he's a very well-schooled boxer and a guaranteed champion if he moves down to cruiserweight. Moving on down to high potential, where we have Joel Irate. Joel Irate is a murderous puncher in the 135-pound division. He drops Abdullah Mason in the amateurs in a split decision loss, and just watching his highlights you can tell he's vicious, dangerous, and a very talented and promising young fighter. In the same tier we're going to look at Jonathan Lopez, also known as Gio Lopez. Gio Lopez has not had it easy on his way up. He fought Eduardo Baez at the age of 20, which is a very difficult opponent to take on that early on. He ended up dropping Baez and winning the fight. He's not fought an opponent of that calibre since, but he's been steadily improving and he's got a great future in the division. Moving on once again in the same tier, we have Giorgio Visioli. Visioli is another one of my personal favourites out of the UK. The best way to describe Visioli is sharp, extremely sharp boxer, visibly stinging punches, great timing, great movement. He's had consistently flawless performances on his way up, and I'd love to see a serious step up. Moving on down to future contender, where we have Andy Cruz. I know he's more or less a contender now after his win over Antonio Moran, but I know some people are expecting him to be on the list, so I put him at the end for the sake of view retention. Visually, when he's boxing at distance, Andy Cruz could be all the way at the top. He looks spectacular when he's boxing and moving versus someone who allows him to. But I think we saw in his last 2 fights, especially versus Antonio Moran, he can be quite vulnerable when he's backed up, and he's not that durable either. There are some serious punchers in the 135-pound division. Guys like Shakur Stevenson, George Kambosos, I'm joking. I mean guys like Tank Davis, even Sam Noakes. I'd be a bit worried for Andy Cruz in a fight versus Sam Noakes if he gets backed up to the ropes, which he most likely will, which is why Cruz isn't as high as he maybe should be based on his talent. Moving on to our final pick, Lester Martinez in the same tier. Lester Martinez is pretty much a contender already. He just doesn't have a top 10 win. Lester Martinez is a really good counter-puncher. He's got very heavy hands and great timing, but he is somewhat beatable at distance. I think the Jushan James fight showed that behind the jab you can beat him. Jushan just made the mistake of coming forwards and making himself open after throwing the jab, which led to Jushan being knocked out. Either way, Lester would be very good versus a pressure boxer. I think he'd knock out Jaime Munguia and maybe Christian and Billy as well. Now that does it for the video. There are countless prospects I could have put on the list. Guys like Callum Peters, Omari Jones, Garen Croft, Ryan Garner, Atif Oblinton, Kira Ruston, Charlie Kazi, Nikita Sue, Kaipo Gallegos, Sean Noakes, Luke McCormack, Erelville Saints, Katsuma Akitsugi, Aidan Walsh, Delicious Ori, Troy Nash, Zakeen Moses, Cornelio Phipps, Stephen Navarro, Ibrahim Mason, Daniel Grandi, Robert Merriweather, Jack Turner, Emmanuel Buttigieg, Albert Gonzalez, Art Barrera Jr., Samuel Contreras, Floyd Diaz, Henry LeBron, Ayuri Cedeno, Henry Cedeno, Movladin Biaslanov, Beck Nurmagomedov, Taylor Bevan, Aaron Bowen, Hamza Uddin, Umar Khan, Brandon Lee, Royston Barney Smith, Ezra Taylor, Yonis Tellez, Yoanli Hernandez. I can go on forever, there's too many prospects. Let me know in the comments anyone I've missed, and I'll tell you where I would have put them. Like and subscribe, leave a comment. Goodbye.